maybe a month after that, I fell back into using again.
Damn.
But I went from heroin to fentanyl because my body was hurting so bad.
Welcome back to another episode of Daddy Issues. Today, our guest is going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his story.
Hi, my name is Eddie, and 29 years old, going on 30 this year, and I'm currently living in Glen Allen, Alaska. It's a remote town, not very many people. There's a lot of villages around me, indigenous people. Um, yeah, just small town living out here.
That's wild. Wow, all the way out into Alaska. And even further because it's like not a big town or anything like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean
Wow.
it's hardly even considered a town because the population is less than 6,000 people, and I think within like a maybe 100-mile radius, there's maybe 1,000 people altogether. So it's
Wow.
it's super small.
Yeah, so everyone knows everybody and probably everyone's
Yeah,
business.
yeah, everybody's family too. I'm
Yeah.
related to a lot of the people in the area. My family's pretty pretty big.
Wow. Yeah, so what happened with were you married? Did you get divorced, have kids? What's your situation looking like?
I wasn't. Right now, I'm single, and my ex and I have been separated since 2021, and we have one kid together. I only have one kid. She's 5 years old right now, uh, and honestly, um, we do pretty good with co-parenting. I feel like I've been listening to the podcast. I feel kind of grateful for my situation because it seems like I have it just a bit easier than a lot of the people that you have on here. So that's something I think about pretty often.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What's the court system look like out there?
Uh, they're not open every day. That thankfully that's not something I've had to have any involvement in with my daughter as
Oh,
far as
nice.
like the court system goes, but I do kind of have a record. uh, but yeah, it's pretty much non-existent unless you're out here like getting in trouble and stuff. There's not very big of a court system out here, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean that's great that that you guys somewhat get along, especially for your daughter. That's
Hmm.
so important, and it's so important. I mean, not only is it like good for you, but it's just so important for your child growing up, knowing
Yeah.
that both parents, like or at least are friendly with each other, and she knows,
Hmm.
you both love her. So that's
Yeah,
great.
definitely. No, she's really excited to go home to her mom, and and at the same time, she's really excited to come home to me. And we try our, we still have our arguments every now and then, and um, you know, just normal, typical life stuff. But for the most part, we do a pretty good job of, making sure that, our daughter comes first. And so,
Yep.
um, we're not bashing each other or saying, no, you can't do this, you can't go do that. We're very, very agreeable people. And it's, just honestly such a blessing because it could be so much worse. And, I'm just grateful for it.
Yeah, I mean it's so good to hear because we've only had a few dads on. I've talked to hundreds of dads, so we've only had a few dads on that come on and say that they get along with their ex and they do good
Hmm.
co-parenting. So it's real good to hear when that happens because even my situation, I went 6 years of just it was terrible. My kids are mentally messed up from it, and now we're
Hmm.
finally to the point where we're getting along, but the damage is kind of done. But it's nice now because we're actually getting along and my kids see that we're getting along. But
Hmm.
is it too late for them? Probably, because they were already, they got real messed up from it. But yeah, it's just terrible fighting every day and just going to court back and forth, spending money. It's just stupid. Give some tips to some of these dads out here.
A lot of it would be talking and explaining what's going on inside of your head and being able to recognize when you're kind of stepping out of line, I would say. where maybe too many of your emotions are getting involved and you're not thinking as clearly as you should be, because obviously, there's going to be some situations where you and your ex are going to be upset at each other and you guys are just, not getting along. And so being able to recognize when you're getting too emotional and saying things that you probably shouldn't, I think is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And, and being able to walk away from a situation when you can recognize that too is another good one, because, just taking a step back and trying to think from an outside perspective, I think is another good one. And, bringing it up to your ex as well too, saying, hey, this is getting to be too much right now. We're getting too caught up in the small details. And so maybe we both need to walk away and take a break from this for a minute, come back to it when we're a little bit more level headed.
Dude, that is,
And then,
those are the most important. Communication
mm-hmm,
and definitely the emotional, learn to step back. I mean, so many
mm-hmm,
people just go off, men and women, because they're
mm-hmm.
thinking emotionally and not logically.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. I think having a good support system is another, like the big three: communication, being emotionally, uh, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, not really intelligent, but just being able to recognize you need to walk away for a minute. But yeah, having a good support system and people around you that will give you a fresh perspective on what you have going on. So
Yep.
somebody that's not super involved with your situation, but if they're able to, talk to you and be honest with you, that's a big thing to have. And people that will tell you how it is without really any regard to your feelings,
Mm-hmm.
because, it's really easy to have people around you that'll just agree with you and get behind you on everything you do. And, that's good in some aspects of life, but you need to have somebody around that will tell you, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. You need to relax. And,
Yep. Yeah, just think it through before you do something
mm,
stupid. If you
yeah.
don't mind me asking, what was the reason for breaking up? Like, it wasn't infidelity or anything, because that was also the beginning of COVID in 2021.
Mm.
So that must have sucked. I don't know how they did it in Alaska, but that must not have been fun to break up during that time.
So during that time, we were living in Fairbanks. It's a bigger town, a couple hours north of where we're at right now. And, um, we were living up there, and I was working in a recreational pot farm, like legal marijuana grow. And when I was living out here, I was doing mostly seasonal work. And so I would do trail cutting, which is,
Mm.
it's a subcontracting job for one of the native corporations out here. Um, and so I was making large sums of money throughout the summertime, and then just kind of hanging out during the winter to kind of doing stuff to keep me busy, like side jobs and like handyman work. And so while we were living up there, I had an opportunity to come back to the area I'm in right now and do another subcontracting job. We planned it for about a month to where we were going to, get ready to move up, from up there to down here. So we got all that done. We loaded up the vehicles and we drove a few hours south and moved back to the area. And, we had jobs immediately as soon as we got here. She went back to the place she was working at before we moved. But there were some pre-existing problems during all of this. Like, we were having a lot of fights pretty much on a regular basis. And when we moved back to this area, it just got so much worse. And it was just wake up, fight, go to work, argue over text, and then come home and fight some more, eat, go to sleep. And, it was a routine thing. And I was getting so tired of it. And I had some plans for our anniversary that was coming up. And some things got in the way, and I had to pay some bills from the previous place that we were at that kind of ate up a lot of my money. And so I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I had some stuff to take care of. I had to take care of it. And we're not going to be able to go do this anniversary trip that I planned. And we kind of fought about it that night. And then, it wasn't even really a fight. It was just kind of a quick spat. And then, we just kind of walked away and, just went about our business. And then the next morning, she just woke up and wanted to fight about it. I was like, I'm not doing this. And so I went to work, and, it's kind of shitty. I did it over text because I just didn't want to be face to face for that conversation and just start a fight and drag it out because I feel like I wouldn't have followed through with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, hey, I can leave for a little while you figure out somewhere to go because this just isn't working. And she wanted to talk about it. I was like, I'm not coming home tonight. I'm just gonna go out, do my own thing, and but I'm so serious about this. Like, I do not want to be in this relationship anymore. This whole fighting day in and day out, is just causing way more stress in my life than I really need right now. And that's not something that I want our daughter to grow up seeing and thinking is normal.
Yeah.
And and so that made sense to her. She kind of recognized too that we've just been on a really, really bad, going through some speed bumps. And I was like, maybe we can, visit this in a month or two once we had some time to think. And, and we just never ended up getting back together. She moved, I kind of stayed where I was at. Right now I'm staying on my mom's property. We got a couple buildings here. As you can see, I'm sitting in my truck. This is about as private as it gets. Even in my cabin over there, my Wi-Fi doesn't work very well. So this is like a good spot. So but she didn't want to stay here. She didn't want to be around my family or anything, and she went and couch hopped for a little while. And at this time, I started to relapse. It was towards the end of summer in 2021, and at that point, I'd been 5 years sober, just a little over, but and I was turning to drugs and alcohol to kind of get over this breakup, and it just put me in a really, really dark space for the last few years.
Yeah. And did she have your child at this point, or how did that work? Were you guys like splitting custody?
So we started a thing where we would do half the week with me and half the week with her, and that's been a pretty steady schedule since then. I mean, I have my daughter 4 days out of the week. For a while there, I was unemployed, just kind of coasting around doing, side work, and because I was still doing just the seasonal work. And so my brother, he was living down in the States at the time, and he ended up moving back into his cabin that I'm in right now. And so that kind of put me out of a spot to stay. And so I was kind of bouncing around a while too until I found another cabin. And then I found some work that was providing housing. And so at this point I was starting to get really, really into the drugs, and I was, that job didn't work out, so I was living in my car for a little while. And at that point I didn't have my daughter.
Right.
And so she was with her mom for about 3 months while I was trying to figure out my living situation. And it kind of seemed like everywhere I was going, there was just drugs everywhere I went. I even left town for a little while to try and get sober. The person I was living with up there was going through a relapse too, and he was planning to get sober with me. And when it really boiled down to it, his heart wasn't really in it. And so I just kind of piggybacked with him and, just kept using. And so I was gone for about 3 months off doing stuff like that. And, I didn't see my daughter pretty much that entire time. I didn't see her at all. it was just phone conversations and stuff, and she kept wondering where I was at, and it was just breaking my heart so much every time. And it was just, she was 2 years old at the time, and so she just really did not understand what was going on.
Yeah, and that's a tough addiction to get over, too. So
Yeah. This was the winter of 2022, and it was the end of that, and so I missed Christmas with her. I didn't have money for presents. I barely even had internet to call her because my phone was disconnected. Like, to this day, I'm still surprised I even have the phone that I had back then. But um, so it was just phone calls. And her birthday is right after Christmas. She was born at the beginning of January, and I missed her birthday. And after that, I kind of realized that it was time to head back home. So I moved in with my parents at the time. I kind of took over their upstairs. They didn't really give me a choice but to get sober. And
yep.
so, there was like no drugs in the house, no drugs on the property. If you're going to be doing it, you can't be here. And I was like, okay. I was pretending to do the sober thing for about 3 weeks. Drugs aren't really available around here. Heroin was my drug of choice. And so to go get them, we had to drive all the way to Anchorage, which is 180 miles away.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we were pretty dedicated. It was a 3 day a week thing. We were going in and out of Anchorage multiple times a week to go and get, the drugs. And one of these trips, after about a month of being home, I was sleeping in my passenger seat in my car, and my cousin, more than a cousin, he's more of a brother to me. We're kind of partners in crime, but he also fell asleep at the wheel. And we wrecked our car, or my car, but it was a pretty bad wreck. Neither one of us were wearing our seat belts. The vehicle rolled 3 times.
Jesus.
We were pretty lucky to walk away. Like, I was asleep, so I had no idea what was going on. I woke up, we were just flying around inside of the car. My face got all scratched up, and
Dude, that
with
would
some
be
stroke of
crazy to wake up and you're just like spinning in a car.
yeah, it
Holy
was.
shit.
It kind of reminded me of Talladega Nights. He's flying through the air. He's like, I'm flying through the air. This is not good.
Yeah, I would think it's like a dream real quick. I'm like, God damn.
Yeah, I know. I felt a really heavy weight on me, and that was what caused me to wake up. And my immediate reaction was to push away from whatever that was, and it turned out to be my cousin.
Wow.
But by some stroke of luck, we ended up landing on all four tires, and we were just in the ditch, and we sat there for a minute, and I really, really looked at him, and I've never wanted to punch him so bad in my life. And then, and this is kind of where that emotional maturity comes in, where you're like, no, that's not the reaction you should be having right now. You're lucky to be alive. He's lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
I think you just need to sit and gather what the hell is going on right now. It was like 30 below. My windows were broken. I look around there. Everything that was in my car was outside of it. And it was like, holy shit, what the fuck just happened? And it was so bad. Next thing I know, there was blood running down my face. It was more rug burn than anything. And I think I got a broken piece of coffee cup that hit my forehead that gave me a good sized cut. And I just feel blood start running down my face. And I was like, I have no idea what to do right now. I started grabbing paper towels out of my dash and just trying to stop the bleeding. And then, we get out and we start gathering all my stuff that was laying in the snowbank and picking up my bumpers and throwing them in the back of my car because I can't put those on right now. It's 35 below.
That's crazy.
I'm in 3 feet of snow right now, and I have no idea how I'm gonna get out of here. And so we get everything in the car. We cover the window up with a blanket, and then we just start getting high. We don't know what else to do.
No. You would think that
And
that's a rock bottom. You would think right there, you'd be like, shit, I'm going to turn my life around.
yeah, no,
Damn.
it was we're lucky to be alive, so we're gonna spend it getting high.
Wow.
And so at this point, I turned from smoking the heroin to using needles. And so we're sitting there, we're shooting up, and in the process of that, here comes uh, one of the guys around here that owned a local business. He was heading into Anchorage at that point, and it was about 5 in the morning. And he sees us in the ditch because our headlights are on, hazards are on, and he stops and checks on us, and he's just really giving us this look like he knows that something is just not right here. And he's nice. He pulls us out of the ditch, and we just get moving, and we go home to his place, which is a really, really small cabin with it has an RV attached to it. It was kind of like a home project type deal that his dad put together. No power, no heat, and it's like 20 something below. We went and found a propane heater that we hooked up, and I'm surprised we even survived that, because I'm pretty sure that stuff gives off carbon monoxide.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, what,
And we
I mean, what a
just
great thing for a stranger to bring you guys back. I mean, that definitely doesn't
yeah,
happen that often.
yeah, especially at 5:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
fucking 50 miles from town, one direction, and another 130 the other direction. So
Jesus.
the fact that he drove by 15 minutes after this all happened was just so lucky. I don't know what was going on with this trip, because we've had nothing but bad luck before that. And so that brings us into 2023. I believe it was last year. I actually didn't get sober that year until around the springtime. I had just gotten into a relationship with somebody that was also using, and so uh, I got really into it. And at this point, I'd been using for 2 years now, almost. My cousin that I was talking about, he has 3 kids with somebody that had passed away in 2021, and that was what caused us to relapse.
Mm,
He was using, and she passed from an overdose, and so I was kind of helping him through the whole thing. I was right there by his side pretty much the entire time. Being around him when I was clean, it pushed me into that relapse. I was really feeling for him. I'd known her for a long time too, and it was just something that hit us really, really hard. And so that was kind of what made me turn to drugs, was, you know, just coping with it, because I've lost a lot of friends, and being such a small community and everybody knowing each other, a lot
yeah.
of family. I've lost so many people, and the community has too. There's people that have, that are younger than me, that have been dying for a long time now, and it's.
And your cousin is now a single father of 3 kids,
Yep.
and now using or still using.
Uh,
Who? Well, maybe not now, but then when his
yeah, yeah.
wife passed,
Hmm.
who was taking care of his kids? Was his family, or
Yeah,
was he
yeah.
still doing it? Yeah.
Uh, he was getting a lot of help from the community, because our family is just beyond huge. Like, it's so
Yeah.
big, and so that's where the strong support system comes in. And that's another thing I'm grateful to, is just having such a good, caring family that it's the same thing. They're looking out for my daughter.
Yeah.
She's a number one priority in all this. So his dad ended up with his kids while he was doing all this, and so it's still kind of the same position for him. Um, and so he's been sober for a couple months now. I'm really proud of him, and yeah, he's just doing a really, really good job, and he's doing what he needs to do to take care of his kids, even though that he's not really with them right now, living with them, but he's still there, and he sees them on a
Yeah.
regular basis, and he does what he needs to do for them. And unfortunately, I'm not really, I'm doing the pretend sober thing. Everybody thinks I am, but
So
I'm really not. So
still using.
yeah,
Yeah.
but except this time I've kind of moved to fentanyl. Um, so
But cause yeah, man, my brother lost a fight and he was an alcoholic and ended up dying from it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I've never touched drugs. I don't do that. And I just don't understand. It's like such a mental thing. Like, cause it's easy for me to be like, dude, why can't you get over it? Like, just stop using.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so hard for people. I have this woman who's in a Addicts Anonymous or something. Like, she's 40 years sober, but if you talk to her, you would think she got sober like last week because she's so passionate about it, and like she's a huge
Mm-hmm.
advocate for it. But it's just like, yeah, it's so hard to beat it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's confusing for someone like me when you tell me this. I'm like, why can't you just stop?
Well, ha- have you ever wished that you were a different person?
So yeah. Sometimes, yeah,
Okay, so I get high because it makes me somebody I would rather be than who I
right.
am sober. Like when I'm sober, all around, I'm like an awkward dude. I'm quiet. I don't have much to say. Like I'd rather be home. I don't want to socialize. But when I'm high, you can't get me to shut up. And so,
It makes you feel good because you
that
feel like a different person.
yeah, it just makes me
Yeah.
more sociable, more personable. I can joke around. I'm just all around more comfortable with myself as a person.
But do
And
you think
so,
about like what if you OD? Like your daughter now has no father, or like, do you even worry about like maybe I'm gonna OD and I'm not here anymore, like on this earth,
uh,
or is that something you just don't
mm,
even think about?
it's something that's kind of in the back of my mind, but honestly, I fully believe that I don't do enough to have that concern. At this point, like I'm working and I don't make as much as I used to. Like I'm kind of like bottom of the totem pole at my company. And so I just want to stay okay.
Yeah.
Like I hardly get high anymore or as high as I'd like to be. I do enough to keep me from getting sick. And maybe if I'm lucky on payday, I can have a few extra to get that high that I want for the weekend when I don't have my daughter. I don't use at home. I don't use on my mom's property, and I don't bring it around my daughter whatsoever. I use usually in the morning time when I'm on my way to work, during lunch, and on my way home. And uh, like I'd hardly even say I'm even high during the day. I'm just okay and not sick.
Wow.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of the unfortunate reality of mine right
Dude, I wish. I mean, damn. I'm sorry to hear that, man. And like, I hope that you get better or want to get better, and do better for you and your daughter as well. But
now.
I'm not going to sit here and preach to you because you probably heard it, from your family and all that other stuff. So it's going to go in one ear
Yeah,
out the other. But I genuinely hope I hope you can beat this, man, because your daughter
yeah,
needs you for sure. You got to think about that. It's like, ah, man, yeah, it's so tough. And I appreciate
yeah,
you opening up and sharing this, because that's a lot.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah.
yeah, man, just stay. I don't even know, man. Stay distracted. Like, find things to do. Would that help out a lot so you don't even get to think about being that other guy that you want to be?
I I really don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
I've tried just about everything I could to be sober and stay sober, but I have such an addictive personality, and it's easily for me to get addicted to anything.
Yeah.
When I was working at that legal marijuana grow, I took my work and I brought it home and I invested hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into a new hobby.
Hmm.
And so when I get introduced into something I get really interested in, I have these really, really like highs like mentally to where I become obsessed with this
Yep.
for weeks or months, but it can never be years because I get bored and move on to the next thing. That's what a lot of it is I get bored and then I start to think too much and then I start doubting myself and not talking very nice to myself. And so I find comfort in, it used to be alcohol. I was a really bad alcoholic. Like drunk every single day, just being useless, couch hopping. You know, this was before I even met my ex. That was how we met, was mutual friends, and we all drink together all the time. And so she heard of me, I'd heard of her, and she wanted to hang out one night. We were drinking, and I was getting high at the time, but I was not nearly as deep into it then as I was now. I was just sticking to like prescription oxycodone and, you know, prescription pills mostly.
Yeah.
And so we kind of met on the party route, and yeah, I was crashing at her house a few days a week. We were hanging out all the time, and we just kind of developed like this not very healthy codependency because we were super comfortable with each other. And I was like moved in within like 2 months of meeting her.
Yeah.
And that progressed to like partying every day. She was missing work. I was just crashing at her house, getting drunk while she was at work, just being a piece of shit, really. And so that was how we met, and we got super comfortable with each other. We were together for almost 2 years until we decided we wanted to get sober. And so that around that time we got sober, and then we talked about having a kid, and then we had one, and then we struggled with some alcoholism together for about 4 years before we split up. And for both of us, honestly, it just got a lot worse. And so during my cousin's passed away girlfriend's funeral, I was drunk and high on coke and got us kicked out of our hotel we were staying at like 4 a.m. Like, I was that much of a drunk.
Yeah.
I was high on coke, drunk, fucking just being obnoxious and annoying to everybody, and it was just bad. Everybody was fucking pissed. We were shit-faced, pretty much sleeping in our car in a parking lot somewhere. And
man, and how old are you?
29.
29 years old.
So at this time, I was 4 years ago, 25, 24.
Yeah.
When all this was happening, and I was 22 when my daughter's mom and I met, and she was 20. And so, you know, she had the money to drink, but she wasn't old enough to buy it.
Right.
So that's where I came in. And so it was bad. We talked each other into everything all the time. And so we were just binge drinking all the time, us and our friends. And we had another couple that we were partying with all the time. And it's been a long like 10 years.
Yeah. What made you
that's
join?
That's really the best thing.
Yeah. What made you join the Facebook groups for the single dads?
It came across my recommended one day, and I was like, I'm interested to see what that's about, because I'm a single dad, and I'm curious to see what other people's stories are. And you know, because I love stories. That's about it. Like, I could sit and listen to a good story, you know, all the time. And so I spend maybe a good like hour just scrolling through that feed, through that Facebook group, and I was just like, holy shit, am I lucky to be going through the situation I am now? Because that's been my thought process for a long time, is there's somebody that always has it worse. And so that kind of keeps me on an even keel and a little bit more grateful for, you know, the life that I'm living right now.
But it could be so much better.
Yeah. But I try to avoid thinking like that, because it's, you know, if you, I'm also a strong believer in, if you keep your expectations low, you'll keep disappointment to a minimal. And so
but that's how you grow as a person. Is like when you fail at something, you got it. You know what I mean? You get either you have two options. You can sit there, you know, fall down and be like, "Damn, I suck," or you could get up and be like, you know, let's move on, right? Because you learn something about it. So even if it's you fail in a business, you understand. Oh, next time I start a business, I'm not going to do these things. You know.
And I do learn from mistakes, and I'm a big, like, you know, shit happens kind of guy, and I don't try to dwell on it too much. And so I kind of have, you know, I'll get past this attitude, you know, even if it does take some time. I do try to think with an emotionally mature level, and I think that's probably what's kept me alive as long as I have been, because there's definitely a lot of situations I've been in that I'm, we're lucky to have survived because
Yeah, absolutely.
I ended up getting in another car accident last July, I believe. It was either July or August. I was coming back from a drug run in Anchorage and I fell asleep at the wheel of somebody else's car I was driving.
Oof.
Had a head on collision with the end of a guardrail, so like the beginning of one
Yeah.
at 70 miles an hour. And so I don't remember the crash. I just woke up in the ICU like
Oh
60
wow.
something hours after it happened. And I kind of do remember some little bits and pieces. I remember being concerned about the girl that I was with that was also in the accident. I was asking about her quite a bit because I was just super concerned, and they kept telling me she was fine. And I had to ask again when I finally came to and realized what was going on and like the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
There was a crack in my sternum, three of my ribs, and a crack in my L5 vertebrae in my lower back, and that was it. I was so
Yeah.
lucky to have survived that because that, I was
Bro,
going 70 something miles an hour when I hit that. And yeah,
you got to
I
look at it
seen,
like this. You are clearly here for a reason. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Dude,
yeah,
these accidents that you're having are so horrific that they would
yeah,
have killed other
yeah,
people easily. So you're here
yeah,
for a reason.
yeah. I mean, something's been keeping me on this planet for sure. And so
I think it was
that's
for you to come
kind
on this
that's,
podcast and for me to talk to you about using. You got to get sober.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully someday soon. Unfortunately, that's not something that's really in my agenda right now. Um,
Is your ex and your child coming to the hospital and seeing you, or like do they know what's going on because you said she moved?
nope, I told
No.
them I was going to Anchorage and nobody heard from me for 3 days, but at the same time, I didn't hear from anybody else.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Um, I came to 3 days after the accident and my phone was dead as dry. That kind of put something into perspective for me because I got sober after that, like maybe a week later,
Yeah.
that nobody wanted to check in on me
So it brings you back
because I was
down.
doing, yeah, I
Yeah.
was doing what I was doing, and that gave people reason not to want to talk to me. Nobody wanted to check on me. They assumed I was off getting a high somewhere, and they're like, he'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And little did they know I was in ICU for 3 days.
Right.
And if I'm being completely honest, I think that car crash probably gave me some kind of God complex that it just gave me this feeling that I was just invincible. And so maybe a month after that, I fell back into using again.
Damn.
But I went from heroin to fentanyl because my body was hurting so bad. And so
And what is it?
it,
Just a
it,
stronger high or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't think anything of it. I don't really care, but people across the country are dying from that stuff.
Right.
Like it's so, so dangerous. And
It's a big issue here in New Hampshire.
mhm.
Yeah.
This whole thing is just so all over the place. Yeah. um, I was originally, I'm from Oregon. I was born in Madras, Oregon. I'm from a reservation not far from there called Warm Springs. My mom and dad were married and they were in their 20s when they had my oldest brother. I'm the second youngest of four siblings. I have three older brothers and a younger sister. Not even a year after my sister was born, I was maybe 3, 4 years old. My parents got a divorce. My mom and the four of us kids moved to Madras, and eventually they ended up getting split custody, where my mom ended up with my younger sister and I, and my two brothers went with my dad. And so
Wow.
from there, we were kind of hopping around city to city. We lived in Salem for a little while. We lived in San Antonio for a little while. And in the
Texas?
meantime, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
My grandma was living there with her husband at the time. And we spent I think it was maybe 6, 7 months there. All four of us kids were there, and I was maybe about 6 years old at this time. And my mom was just off. She was a drug dealer, and so she was involved with some men, and she was just running around doing her thing. So eventually, we left San Antonio, and we
Well, we lost him. Uh, he's out in Alaska, so he doesn't have service isn't that good. But wow, that was a powerful, powerful story, and I don't even know what to say. I appreciate him coming on. I appreciate you, Eddie, for coming on and sharing your story. Um, Man, I hope that you get clean. I hope you get better, and because your daughter needs you, 100%, man. I know it's so easy to say and it's harder to do, but wow, this was a powerful, powerful episode story. Damn, I don't even know what to say. So, but thank you for coming on and sharing and being so open and honest. So, I pray that that you get through this.
Me down, you can hold me down. You can hold